Hello guys, so today I just want to explain three things, or actually I'm just going to focus on two of them, and then tomorrow I will explain the other thing that I want to explain in class when you guys are here. Okay, so die eerste een wat ons gaan kyk na is die vergelyking van die asymptote. So if they give you an equation, like in the example here, daar's ons die vergelyking wat hulle vir jou gee. Kan hulle vir jou die volgende vragies vra? Hulle kan eerstens jou vra om die vergelyking te gee van die asymptote. Nou, vergelyking in Engels is die equation of the asymptotes. Okay. So the asymptotes we already know is indicated here by Q. Okay, daar staan ons nou eintlik plus Q. En dit is jou asymptoot. Okay. So roughly, if we have to look at this graph, this is the y and the x-axis. So ons mos nou 'n asymptoot gehad het hierso by -2. Daar sou jou stippellyntjie mos nou gewees het. Okay. And we also could have determined where more or less the graph would have been because it is a negative graph. Daarom sou ons geweet het dit sou min of meer so gelyk het. Okay, that's how the graph would have looked like more or less. So we also know it would have intersected the x-axis over there where I just made the dot. Okay. So, eerste ding die vergelyking van die asymptote. So basically they want us to determine the equation of this line. Now we did this when we did straight lines. Onthou het ons reguit lyne gedoen en die lyn loop parallel aan die y-as of aan die x-as, dan het dit so gelyk. Nou op die stadium gaan julle net 'n asymptoot doen wat deur die y-as gaan. But actually, in reality, there is another asymptote. And the other asymptote is here, and that is basically the y-axis. Now, that is the x-asymptote. And actually, in reality, there is going to be added something over there where I just made the waar ek die pyltjie nou gemaak het. Daaronder die breek gaan daar ook eintlik volgende jaar nog iets bykom. But you don't have to stress about that this year. Okay, so ons gaan net doen die asymptoot wat deur Q aangedui word. And that is the -2. So obviously we know it intersects at -2 over here. Okay, so how do we show that in equation form? So, omdat dit net die y-as sny, is die maklikste onthou, al wat jy dan sê is, y is gelyk aan -2. Okay, but there is actually two asymptotes. Dis asymptote 2. So jy het een wat deur die x-as ook gaan. En dit is dan waar x is gelyk aan 0. And that is actually the y-axis. So dit is die y-as eintlik. Okay, maar vir elke vragie vir die jaar kan jy net skryf die asymptoot x is gelyk aan 0. And then obviously the y will be influenced by the value of Q. Okay. Die ander ding wat hulle ook vir ons kan vra is die definisie en die waardeversameling. The domain and the range. Okay. Nou, dit is ook eintlik baie maklik by die hiperbool. So the domain we know is all the values for x. And the range is all the values for y. In ander woorde, jy moet kyk waar gaan hierdie grafiek oral waardes hê by x. Now actually gaan dit oral wees. So you could write x and then from -infinity until positive infinity. Or you can write, there's other way to write it as well. You can write XER. But, and here is a big but, it will never be at the asymptote. So where x is equal to 0, remember we said here that the asymptote is x equal to 0, and that's this line here, that's the y-axis. X will never be equal to 0 because that's where the graph will never cross. If you see here on the x-axis and you look at the x values, this graph goes up here and it never touches the y-axis. It starts down here and it also never ever touches the y-axis. So it's all the values from -infinity until infinity, but it excludes 0. The same thing with the y values. It's actually all the values, so it's y until, from minus infinity en dan tot oneindig. Maar, of jy kan ook sê IER, maar belangrik wat jy moet dan bysê is, y gaan nooit ooit raak aan minus 2 nie, because that is also the other asymptote that we have here. Okay, so jy moet sê y nie gelyk aan minus 2 nie. Okay, so I want you guys to do an example of this. I want you guys to do for homework exercise 13. So exercise 13, you have to do number 1. I want you to look at graph number E. So jy gaan kyk van grafiek E. Dan wil ek hê, moet jy vir my al 4 punte doen. So, eerstens, moet jy dit vir my teken. You have to sketch it for me. And then I also want you to do numbers 1, which is the domain and the range, die definisie en die waardeversameling. Dan moet jy ook asseblief die vergelyking van die asymptote vir my gee. En dan ook die koördinate van die x-afsnit, wat jy in elk geval bereken wanneer jy die grafiek teken. And then number 4, I will explain to you tomorrow in class. Okay, so you only do number 1 until 3 and you also draw it. En dan by nummer 3, doen jy vir my dieselfde. Jy teken vir my daai skets by nummer 3, sketch the graph. And then number B, you write down the equation. If the graph is shifted downwards by 4 units, in ander woorde, as die grafiek 4 eenhede af gaan skuif, hoe gaan dit dan lyk? So ek wil hê julle moet dit 'n bietjie vir my probeer. Dis 'n bietjie van 'n moeiliker vraagie. And then, if that graph is moved 4 units down, I want you to sketch that as well. Okay. En ons merk dit dan môre in die klas saam. En dan gaan ek vir julle verduidelik môre in die klas hoe om die vergelyking van die hiperbool te bepaal.